on the other hand, we want to be in Greater Chennai Corporation schools to build 5,000 square feet farms on the ground that can feed into the midday meal schemes that these schools have been running very successfully over the last 25 years or so.
Hello, and welcome to the U20 Dialogue series. I'm your host Punit Gandhi from NIUA, and we are excited to bring to you a series of discussions on various urban development challenges faced by cities across the world and its potential solutions. This month, we will talk to experts working in the urban sector on the theme of encouraging environmentally responsible behaviors in cities. And today we have with us Mr. Krishna Mohan Ramchandran. He is the Chief Resilience Officer of Chennai City, and he will help us understand about the food security in urban areas. Welcome to the show, Mr. Ramachandran.
Thank you very much, Puneet.
When we are talking about food security, and I'll directly jump to the conversation, we and specifically in urban areas. Let's start the conversation on the lines of what is urban farming that we are looking at, and what kind of food resources are we talking about?
Yeah, Puneet, see, the whole concept of urban farming has come about because, as part of 100 resilient cities, uh, we've realized that 70% of the world's population is going to be living in cities by 2050. So the question also is, how do we feed these people? Yes, we do have our farms, which are unfortunately being urbanized.
Yeah.
Peri-urban areas around the cities themselves are being urbanized, so we're losing precious farm ground. So the question came up about how do we actually feed these people, particularly the urban poor. And the answer, we believe, lies in urban horticulture, which is really about using unutilized public spaces, community spaces, and in Chennai and in India, we what we call OSR spaces, open space reserved spaces,
Okay.
to create community farms um, eh, on the ground, or to use the thousands of acres of concrete terrace spaces to convert them to green spaces and
Yeah.
use that also for creating vegetable farms, not just green roofs, but vegetable farms. So that is really the concept of urban farming, and it seems to be catching on across the world because it has a huge range of benefits apart from food security itself. It also addresses the issue of climate change through it addresses the issue of urban heat, for example. It
Yeah.
addresses the issue of increasing the sponge effect of the city, as it increases the city's ability to hold rainwater
Yeah.
and put it into the ground. Very, very relevant for a city like Chennai. Plus, it it also brings the community together in many
True.
ways. For example, in Chennai, if you see, the government has been very focused on managing solid waste
Yeah.
by segregating, not just by burning, but by segregating. So, urban horticulture is a great way of meaningfully bringing the community around this and saying, listen, please segregate your waste, take your green waste, compost it, and put it into your kitchen gardens.
Yeah.
So, that aspect of urban farming is also very, very relevant. And therefore, we believe that in the future, as we look towards 2050, urban farming, if it's accepted across global cities,
Yes.
can contribute to as much as 10% of the agri output of this world that we live in.
Wow. And 10% is quite a huge number per se, and especially when majority of the people are going to live in cities, that will really help us. So let's try and break it down, the conversation over here. And it sounds exciting that okay, we can now use rooftop spaces, specifically open spaces that you're mentioning about. And in that case, how was this project thought of, and what are some of the targets that we are looking at about this project?
Yeah, great question, Puneet, and something that I love to answer. So, actually, the project was born in my head, at least, when in my days in advertising, flying back into Chennai, I used to look at all the open concrete terrace spaces and say, my God, what do we do with this?
Yeah.
And then when I joined the 100 Resilient Cities Network, we had a tie up with the University of British Columbia. And Dr. Mulli Chandrasekhar from there asked me, called me one day and said, Krish, we have international students who are studying city resilience and they need a project.
Yeah.
Uh, can you help us with the project?
Yeah.
So this is the project I gave them. I said, what do we do with this, thousands of acres of concrete terrace spaces? And they are the ones who actually laid the foundation for urban farming in Chennai.
Yeah.
So what our plan is like this. We've over the last 2 years we've created, we believe, one of the most comprehensive urban farming websites in this part of the country. It's called Urban Thotams, and it has two components. It has Mottamadi Thotams, which are essentially rooftop gardens, and then it has Makkal Thotams. Now, Mottamadi Thotams or rooftop gardens, we hope to promote through the resident welfare associations of middle income and upper middle income localities.
Yeah.
And there's a program that we've started for that. On the other hand, the Makkal totems or the community totems are really built around the open spaces that I spoke of. And these could be within schools, within colleges, city, and the Buckingham Canal. So it could be on the banks of the canals where a lot of underutilized public spaces are present. So these are the two components of the urban totem. So Motamari totem and the Makkal totems. And what we've done so far is, on one hand, we've reached out through resident welfare associations to,
Mm.
uh, to, as I said, middle income and upper middle income localities. On the other hand, we want to be in Greater Chennai Corporation schools to build 5,000 square feet farms on the ground that can feed into the midday meal schemes that these schools have been running very successfully over the last 25 years or so.
Yeah.
We've also reached out to the vulnerable communities living in Perumbakam, which is a resettlement colony. We reached out to about 400 families there, also in Sevencherry and in Ururkuppam and in Ramapuram. So totally, we've reached out to about 800 families in these localities, and we reached out to around 52 government shelters for the homeless and Anganwadis, about 150 Anganwadis.
Wow.
So that's where the program is currently. Where we'd like to take it is to cover all the government schools and public schools and colleges that have empty spaces, to
Yeah.
look at rooftops, and by 2050 cover at least 30% of the rooftops in the city
Yeah.
of Chennai. We've also got a program to reach out to the corporates and say, look, you've got large campus spaces.
Yeah.
Utilize what is called hydroponics, which is a more investment oriented form of urban farming in your
Yeah.
campuses, but the returns on those are much higher. So that is the overall plan for urban farming in the city of Chennai. And we're also hoping that this doesn't just remain a program that is run by two initiatives of the Rockefeller Foundation. This program is really funded by what is called the Adrian Ash Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center.
Okay.
We are hoping that the city will pick it up, and
Yeah.
also we'll be able to establish a social enterprise around urban farming in the future.
Oh, wow, that makes it very interesting component because I could see so many components coming together to develop this whole project. It's you have brought in public, you have brought in industries, you have a funding agency which has helped you set up this whole case study so that there can be an actual experimentation on ground, and then you're utilizing the empty spaces. And I know about these empty spaces because I specifically come from solar background. I have installed rooftop solar for a couple of years before getting into this. So I have looked into this kind of ecosystem as well. That is it possible that just one, and because I was in Mumbai, the space
Yeah.
constraint was very high. So
Yeah.
we were thinking and we were trying to develop projects on the line that can we develop hydroponics at the base of the rooftop, and on top of
Right.
it put solar, so that from
Absolutely.
the same thing you get more benefit.
Yeah.
While it is very cost intensive, as you mentioned, uh,
Yeah.
but how is it possible? So let's now break it down again into different segments that we have. One is your whole community engagement. You are bringing a lot of community members together. You have one is just on the rooftop garden, and another is the Makkal Totem, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the community gardens, specifically
Yes.
for schools. So, how is this whole community engagement of sorts coming in together?
Okay. Puneet, let me start with the Mottamadi Totems or the rooftop gardens. Very
Sure.
clearly, we have a very focused target audience here. We are saying it's the middle income and upper middle income localities.
Yeah.
So I live in a locality like that, which is Kalakshetra Colony, which is on the coast near Elliott's Beach. So
Okay.
there is a certain kind of people here who seem more inclined towards saving the planet, more
Yeah.
inclined towards addressing environmental issues, um, and of course, more inclined to look at opportunities where they believe that they can uh, perhaps increase their earnings to a point. So
Yeah.
we've now reached out to, uh, we said the key to reaching out to this segment is really through the resident welfare associations. So
Yeah.
we ran a campaign about 8, 9 months ago. It was called Motamari Champions, where we reached out to through social media and LinkedIn and so on to resident welfare associations and said, please give us ideas on
Yeah.
how do you think that you can motivate your residents to take up urban farming or rooftop gardening. And we got some 50 wonderful responses, out of which we chose 10 of the best. And the 10 Motamadi champions were actually given uh, vegetable garden kits for them to
Okay.
start experimenting at home. We also found that, in a way, because of the pandemic, lot of people had turned to gardening itself.
Yeah.
So whether it's on their rooftop or in their balconies, or in their backyards. So we kind of rode on that, and we are hopeful now, when once we launch the totem website itself,
Yeah.
urban totem website, that we will get uh, some engagement and traction with this community that we're addressing. On the other hand, the muckle totems
Yeah.
is a little bit more, I would say, tough problem to tackle, because
Okay.
we have to get many people on board, including the government and many
Yeah.
different departments within the government. But this is what we've done. We've done a fair amount of advocacy amongst the urban poor to tell them, look, this is what a urban farm can do for you, a vegetable garden kit can do for you. We've also conducted virtual classes amongst
Okay.
those who have raised their hands and said, yes, we are interested in doing this, on
Yeah.
how to nurture and grow your urban farms. In the communities that have adopted the vegetable garden program, we have set up WhatsApp groups. So
Okay.
it serves two purposes. One, they can, WhatsApp and ask if they have any doubts about pests or other diseases that
Yeah.
they're facing, or how to grow it better. And also it serves as a medium to motivate each other. So different communities saying, hey, you know what, we harvested uh, 3 kgs of greens this morning and we made parupakere with it, so
Okay.
which is a kind of a dal.
Yeah.
So and we are now planning a capacity building program for the teachers and coordinators in the Anganwadis that we've
Yeah.
reached out to. Like I said, we've reached out to about 150 Anganwadis and about 52 shelters, and to the communities leaders in the vulnerable communities, saying we are happy to run a 2-day on-site program for you
Yeah.
that will teach you everything you need to know about urban farming. So these are the ways that we've reached out. We are on the cusp of it as we speak, Puneet, and I'm just hoping that we'll be able to convince the government departments, and there are many who are involved. For example, there's the Greater Chennai Corporation because of the schools. There
Yeah.
is the Tamil Nadu Women's Development Corporation, who are very keen on this project because they run a program for the
Yeah.
women's self-help groups that
Yeah.
teaches them vegetable gardening. So
Yeah.
they are completely on board. There is the Tamil Nadu Skills Development Corporation. There is the Tamil Nadu Slum Clearance Board that needs to come on board. And of course, the Tamil Nadu Horticulture Department. So to bring them all together, there is a lot of, I think, yeah, intention to come together, but it is a challenge to bring them together. And so we're hoping that in the next 18 months, we
Yeah.
will have a program that is really cohesive and completely engaged with these two different sets of communities that we are talking to.
Yeah, and that is what I think makes this program very interesting as well, because uh, we are seeing a lot of social groups coming together, first of all, which is already a big incentive for developing this program. At the same time, we are looking at how this food will again help back to the schools in itself. And then we see that okay, there are so many government departments which will come together to develop this whole. So I do obviously believe here that the challenge is not small to bring so many stakeholders together uh, at one platform, make sure that everyone's interests are taken care of and move forward. So, any other specific challenge are you facing in taking this project forward, and what are the things that are being thought of to, make sure that this actually becomes a reality, and more schools will get on board, more and more communities will get on board, RWAs will get on board to support the whole movement.
So, Puneet, I'll answer that in two bits.
Sure.
Definitely, there are challenges, one with the Motamari totems and the other with the Makal totems. So, I'll
Yeah.
start with the Motamari totems. Um, One key challenge here is really to get people to coordinate and work together. So, in an
Yeah.
apartment, for example, you're really talking about uh, common spaces, be it
Yeah.
on the terrace or on the ground. So,
Yeah.
and that's where we believe that the Resident Welfare Association can play a key role in convincing people living in an apartment block that these common spaces should be used for their common good,
Yeah.
and that they shouldn't be fighting over this. So there may be the odd person who is not interested in utilizing his terrace space
Yeah.
for a vegetable garden. He would prefer to use it to walk maybe in the evenings.
Yeah.
So, but we need to take that into consideration as well. So, bringing people together within an apartment or a community and getting them all on board is definitely a challenge, which is what we try to address through the Motamari Challenge campaign. And we believe that we have to run with it and address some of the challenges that may come up as and when it does. But there are also some very practical challenges here. One
Yeah.
is you need a building certification to
Yeah.
put this kind of weight on the roof.
Okay.
So each bag will weigh around five kgs. So if you're putting 100 bags up there, then it's 500 kgs. Can the roof really take this?
Yeah.
So a building certification needs to be done. Secondly, waterproofing, absolutely essential. So, and there are various people who provide this, including Asian Paints, for example.
Yeah.
And thirdly, you uh, on water. We are a water scarce city.
Yeah.
So, where do we find the water for this? Now, the answer to that is it really comes at two levels. One is to address the issue of wastage of water during in these homes, particularly the middle class and upper middle class homes who seem to waste the most water. So,
Yeah.
we've run a campaign recently on 10 tips to save water at home. So
Yeah.
that's a broad campaign that tells you you can save water at home. But we have a solution which Tanhoda, which is the Tamil Nadu Horticulture Department, is providing at a subsidized cost, which is a simple drip irrigation system that supplies the optimum amount of water to your plant.
Okay.
So drip irrigation is something that we're looking at. So these are some of the main challenges that we face here. The other, of course, is as the movement grows
Yeah.
and the produce and the yield as well grows, can we or should we look at contract farming? So should the whole of Kalakshetra colony, for example, be only growing greens so that it
Yeah.
becomes more economically viable? So those are some challenges that we need to address as we go along. On the Makkal Totem side, the challenge, of course, um, is working with the government to get them to work together,
Yeah.
but also to convince them that there are some policy changes that are required in order to make this urban farming feasible. So, for example, in Paris, there's a mandate that
Yeah.
all new buildings have to be green roofs.
Yeah.
There is a city in Argentina called Rosario where they've passed a mandate that says uh, public, unutilized public land can actually be leased out to the urban poor to
Yeah.
grow vegetables. So
Oh,
those challenges we need to address, and I think it can be addressed.
yeah.
And one more layer on top of that, if we can find these underutilized public spaces within the city of Chennai,
Yeah.
what we'd like to do is actually attach those to women's self-help groups in that area so
Yeah.
that it becomes a source of livelihood for them.
Yeah.
So, and one other critical thing that we need to address as far as the Muckle totems is concerned is
Yeah.
that there are many well-meaning, companies, corporates, and other organizations, NGOs, who have started something but have not provided the budget for monitoring and evaluation and maintenance, operations and maintenance.
Yeah.
Now, that is an absolutely critical area we are finding. So, if we are not able to sustain it for them and build champions within the community for the urban farming project, we're dead in the water. So, which is
True.
why we've got a very comprehensive monitoring and evaluation program in place. We're building a operations and maintenance program as well, and a capacity building program, so that we're looking at this long term and more holistically.
That does sound very I mean, it's well thought through process that you're trying to approach as well on those lines. And that makes me curious, like what is, as you have already mentioned, that you are also looking at it, that can it be a social enterprise? So what is the financial viability of this project? How financially viable this can be? Will it always require support from the city, or is it actually possible to commercialize socially, that so many things can be integrated together to make it a profitable project?
Yeah, Puneet, excellent question. It's something that we are very, very focused on. And we've taken actual inspiration from two what cooperatives.
Okay.
One, of course, is Amul, and the other is
Yeah.
Avan.
Okay.
Both of these are dealing with one of the most perishable items that you can get, which is milk.
Yeah.
And both of them have done some very interesting things. One is, of course, they've established a collection chain,
Yeah.
which very effectively collects even from a small farmer.
Yeah.
So there are lessons to be learned from that. They've established an excellent distribution channel, right?
Yeah.
So there are retail outlets right through the city. Plus, they have value added. So they're not just selling milk at the end of the day, they're selling a whole range of products. So if you look at
Yeah.
Amul, for example, the range of products that they're selling is staggering.
Yeah.
So we want to apply the same principles to urban farming as well. And we believe it is so much more simpler to do it because many of the vegetables that we're growing don't necessarily have to be that perishable, unlike milk,
Yeah.
or the distances that we need to travel. They're all within the city. So
Yeah.
urban totems as a retail chain is something that we're very seriously looking at, something that uh, will be an organization, not just an NGO, an organization that that is run professionally and is financially profitable, but with the right focus. The focus being
Yeah.
on people, environment, and profits.
Yeah.
Profits last but not the least.
Yeah.
So that is, we believe that if this model has to be sustainable, it can only sustain itself if it is professionally run as a social enterprise.
Yeah.
So we're very clear about that, and that is what we're working towards. We've also found that there are many avenues for women's entrepreneurship, for example. So a program like this helps the cottage industry so they can weave baskets as containers.
Yeah.
They can create uh, organic fertilizers, organic pesticides, all with products within the city itself.
Yeah.
Neem, for example, grows all across the city, and it's one of the best organic pesticides you can get. You
Yeah.
can even harvest seeds and sell them at a profit. So, for the urban poor, particularly the urban women, there are many opportunities here for livelihood generation. And on top of that, there are, if you brand this right, there
Yeah.
are opportunities to value add. So, and capitalize on the current growing organic market within the cities. So,
Yeah.
value added projects like jams, pickles, squashes, sweets and savories, you know, all
Yeah.
of that which will add to the margins and therefore provide greater revenues for the urban poor is something that an a social enterprise can actually fund, and that can be
Yeah.
the social bit of the enterprise, you know.
True.
So to sum it up, we believe that unless a professional uh, and uh, financially savvy organization is in place, a program like this will flounder at some point in time.
Yeah. No, that sounds true. And like looking at it, that the more complex product you are going to make out of it, the better the margins you will get, which is absolutely the point of doing this whole thing at a large scale. Now, just coming to the present scenario of pandemic, what are the major challenges that you're facing as of now, and how is the project moving forward with this whole pandemic?
Puneet, you know, in some ways, the pandemic put a break on some parts of the project.
Yeah.
So, in 2020, to try and get approvals
Yeah.
or MOUs signed with the government to proceed with our schools project, for example, became difficult because the the entire system was working very hard
Yeah.
to address the whole COVID issue itself.
Yeah.
But I think we turned this into an opportunity. So some of the funds that we had, uh, as an organization, we repurposed it for COVID relief. So we
Yeah.
did, the dry rations for the vulnerable communities. We gave out nutrition kits for children and the elderly. We
Yeah.
gave out tarpaulin um, um, uh, sheets for the homeless in North Chennai, so that when the northeast monsoon came,
Yeah.
they had something to shelter under. So that was one part of it. But we managed to repurpose the urban horticulture project itself very nicely. We worked with an organization called Sempulum Sustainable Solutions to provide what we call mobile vegetable garden kits. So
Okay.
these are kits that have uh, 5 grow bags, vegetable seeds, some soil, some vermicompost, some organic fertilizers and pesticides. And we gave this out, like I said, to about 700 families
Yeah.
in living in vulnerable communities, to 52 government shelters for the homeless, and to 150 Anganwadis.
Yeah.
And the response that we've got has been quite positive, not just about how it's supplementing their meals and their nutrition, but also about the kind of mental health and the ability of an activity like this to relieve stress and bring some joy into the family or into that community.
Yeah.
So it's been truly, for us, I would say, a heartwarming experience. This
Yeah,
whole mobile vegetable garden kit program. Plus, I must also add that because of COVID and because people were at home, many of them naturally turned to gardening. So they had
yeah,
rooftop gardens, balcony gardens, gardens in their backyard, and so on.
yeah,
And that has also helped us establish the fact that urban farming is here to stay. Hopefully, if we adopt it,
yeah.
and urban farming is something that we need for the future to meet the challenges of a pandemic like this and to build a more resilient city.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that is where my next question then comes is this pandemic, and we hope that we get out of it soon. But the bigger challenge also comes on the lines of climate change that we are facing now. And you are working as a resilience officer, so I guess no one knows better than you on the city level how important this topic is. So, how does this socially? We see a lot of good things that can we can get out of this. But in the physical urban space, what are some of the major challenges that this will help mitigate from the climate change perspective?
Yeah, the two things straight away. It has the potential to address food security, which has been highlighted by the pandemic. It also has the potential to address livelihood opportunities, once again, hugely highlighted by the pandemic because of the lockdown and how it directly affected the lives of the daily wage earner. And it was brought home to us like nothing else has ever done before.
Yeah,
So we believe that urban farming can address the issues of food security and livelihoods, particularly for the urban poor. So that's one aspect of it, and that I think is the driving aspect of it. But if you look at the larger picture, Puneet,
yeah,
now look at the thousands of acres of concrete terraces that Chennai has. We
yeah,
can If we can convert them to vegetable gardens, to
yeah,
green space. It has several benefits. One, of course, is it brings down urban heat, and this has been
yeah,
proved by studies done out of Oroville, which is our neighboring little village
yeah,
next to Pondicherry, the international village.
yeah,
It can increase the city's ability to hold our adequate rainfall that we get,
yeah,
both during the southwest, and the northeast. And as you know, unplanned urbanization has resulted in our inability to hold our water, and the
yeah,
water then rushes into the sea, and we spend millions, building desal plants to take the seawater
yeah,
and convert it back into water, into drinking water.
yeah,
So it we believe that urban farming can actually increase the city's ability to put our rainwater into the aquifers.
yeah,
So this is the second aspect. Third, of course, is related to urban heat. We all survive on air conditioners,
yeah.
so it will bring down the need to run those air conditioners and therefore address the whole issue of climate change and global warming and all of that as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with the air conditioning point because I have myself seen like with all the rooftop installations we would do for solar as well. We would bring down the room temperature by at least 3-4 degrees just putting solar panels on the top, and
Yeah,
that was something. If we have something with soil and water in it, I'm sure it will be much higher reduction, or that's my estimate over there. So that's there for
yeah,
sure. But now this is something a personal question because I'm not someone who keeps a lot of plants because somehow they die. When I try to keep them, I try to nourish them. I can't sustain that whole thing. I don't know what is it. And I know a lot of friends as well. They prefer keeping a lot of. They're like that. It's easier to buy a plant than to germinate the seeds and help
mm.
them grow. So, are you? What is your take on it? How is those two processes different somewhere, or which is better, which is not? How do you see that?
Yeah, Puneet, the thing is that, I started out life as a planter.
Okay.
My first job out of college was with a British company called Haddison's in Crossfield. And I was on a plantation that grew tea, rubber, and cocoa.
Yeah.
The joy of seeing something grow is very different from actually buying something. So,
Okay.
uh, and that is some that through our mobile vegetable garden kits,
Yeah.
it's so many people have discovered that joy, including every member of our Chennai Resilience team. They all have garden kits at home. If they don't have space on the terrace, they've just put it on their balconies.
Yeah.
But to see that seed germinate and follow a simple process to finally harvest a cherry tomato
Yeah.
from a plant, the joy of that is very different from just buying a plant. You can do that, but I would strongly advocate starting from the very beginning.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you also mentioned that how you are aligning with industries and helping them in this whole process as well. Can you give a bit of more highlight on the same? That would be interesting to know.
Yeah, Puneet, we haven't started the program. We're only talking to industries, particularly in the on the IT corridor, uh,
Okay.
because unfortunately, what has happened is that the entire IT corridor in Chennai was built on the Pallikarne marsh, and some
Hmm.
of our largest IT companies are situated on the Pallikarne marsh. So it's an environmental disaster that has happened,
Yeah,
but they do have large campuses and they have their hearts in the right places.
yeah,
So we are saying uh, set up a urban farm, but a hydroponics farm on your
yeah,
campus because you have the space. If you don't have it on the ground, you definitely have it on your roof space, which is lying
yeah,
completely unutilized in most cases,
yeah,
and use that to, um, like in this case of schools, to feed into your campus canteens. Now,
hmm,
uh, right now, that is not a very good idea
yeah,
because hardly anybody's going to work.
yeah,
But most IT companies have said that eventually, once the pandemic is done, that they will have at least 50% of their, the employees coming back to work. And if you
yeah,
take an organization like Cognizant, for example,
yeah,
they have over 60,000 employees in Chennai, the city of Chennai alone.
yeah,
So one is, of course, what they can do within the campus, but they can also through that motivate 60,000 employees to start this at home.
yeah,
So so that is the program that we are trying to initiate with them, and with the help of the Confederation of Indian Industries, CII. We are also talking to them,
yeah,
and we're hoping to through these different organizations to establish urban horticulture uh,
yeah,
within the corporate campuses,
yeah.
uh, and through them reach out through employees to motivate them to build urban farms in their homes.
Oh, nice. That really sounds fascinating for sure, and I hope that once we are out of pandemic, they are able to adopt it so that yeah, it just makes more sense if it's locally sourced. And I think uh, people don't realize, but something which is locally sourced is always going to be much. It will not cause pollution. The transportation and everything just goes off eventually, which again you're saving on fuel,
Yeah.
which brings in much more benefits. One last question that I would like to ask is on the lines that there is a lot of issue with light and heat that our cities face. So how can someone make sure that such things are properly managed when we are talking about urban farms?
Yeah. So there are some uh, um, low-cost measures that you can use. For example, on your terrace, you can buy a shade net, which is
Okay.
not expensive at all, and use that. during the summer months. So essentially during May and June and some parts of July,
Yeah.
to have a shade net on plants that actually require it. A lot of plants actually thrive in the sunlight, but some
Yeah.
of them don't. So
Yeah.
you put those plants under the shade net.
Yeah.
Now for the urban poor who have actually shown them that they can use their old saris as shade nets.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, and also to use uh, the the plastic bottles that throwaway
Yeah.
plastic bottles and turn them into mini drip irrigation systems.
Okay.
So yeah, so these are the ways we think we can address the whole issue of heat and light
Yeah.
in the city, particularly related to urban farming. So
Yeah. And can we specifically get which plants will
yeah,
grow in better shade and better light, or what kind of water resources?
yes. Puneet, thank you for asking that question. What I like to say is that um, if you go to urbanthottams.com, which is our
Yeah.
website, it
Yeah.
gives you a very comprehensive idea of what to plant during which season and
Yeah.
also what to plant in which part of your house. So, be it on the rooftop or in the balcony or in the backyard.
Oh, wow.
So, yes, it's a very comprehensive encyclopedia that we have. And it also gives you a planting life cycle
Yeah.
uh, and a harvesting life cycle. So if you are an urban planning to be an urban farmer and you
Yeah.
don't know much about plants or vegetables or greens or herbs, this is the website to go to.
We will make sure that we put that website in our credit show notes at least, so that people can refer to it easily. Because it sounds exciting enough and interesting enough that if there is a readily available resource, I think it should be reached out to maximum number of people. So coming to the last question that we ask everyone on this podcast is the ecosystem you are trying to build. What are the major skill sets that will come out, and this can be used for making sure that these kind of ecosystem are developed in cities across India or across the world?
Yep, Puneet, here again, our focus is on creating livelihoods for the urban poor. So, from
Yeah,
that perspective, to begin with, through the Tamil Nadu Women's Development Corporation and through our own efforts with
yeah,
Sempulum Sustainable Solutions, we are doing capacity building in the area of vegetable farming.
yeah,
And we believe that once the urban farming as a concept grows within the city, to begin with, it offers an opportunity for gardeners across the city. Now,
yeah.
one of the good things about this is that a gardener today in Chennai gets paid a minimum of 1,000 rupees a day.
Okay.
Now, consider that against an average payment of about between 500 to 600 rupees that
Yeah,
a daily wage earner can make in the city, be it a domestic worker or otherwise. Maybe a skilled laborer will get a little bit more,
yeah,
maybe 700, 750. But a gardener gets 1,000 rupees. So straight away, I think we're creating an opportunity there for somebody to earn a little bit more money. It's not very much. I'm speaking in relative terms,
yeah,
but the opportunity lies there. The second is that it also offers women from the vulnerable communities the opportunity to create products out of home itself.
yeah,
So, be it if she's living in a locality that has urban farms, to use where the produce there to create jams, pickles, and squashes
yeah,
that can then sold through a retail chain. And here again, I'm not saying we have to recreate a retail chain. There
yeah,
are retail chains that are already in place that are selling organic produce. We can utilize that and connect them up for them to get better revenues. So there is an opportunity there. There is an
yeah,
opportunity in creating the retail chain itself in terms of livelihood for the urban poor. There are
yeah,
other opportunities of creating entrepreneurial products such as what I mentioned earlier, which are the organic fertilizers, organic pesticides, and so on.
Yeah.
So, and one other thing is we have a small model here in where I live in Besant. It's called Vidya Coffee House.
Yeah.
So they access food that's really sweets and savories produced in this locality from housewives and
Oh,
sell
wow.
it in their shops, you
Yeah.
know. So as the model develops, we believe that we'll find more and more opportunities uh, to give livelihood potential to urban poor, particularly the women.
That that sounds really fascinating, and I hope that we are able to scale this up as much as possible. Because the amount of social benefits I see of this kind of developing an ecosystem is absolutely tremendous. Thank you so much, Mr. Ramachandran. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you and understanding more about how we can bring in food security in our urban ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Puneet, thank you so much for having me on this program, and I've really truly enjoyed speaking to you. And I really hope that a lot of that what we spoke of today will happen in the future, and urban farming can help us build more resilient cities in Chennai and in other parts of the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You have been listening to Understanding the Future podcast. To know more about Climate Center for Cities, check out our website www.niua.org/c-q. The show is conceptualized, produced, and edited by Punit Gandhi, Senior Associate at CQ. You can now subscribe to our podcast on your favorite channel, which can be accessed through the credits. Also, don't forget to follow us on our social media for more updates. Do share your reviews with us and help us spread the podcast to your friends and colleagues. Do write to us if you would be interested in learning about any specific topics. Thank you and stay tuned for our next episode. You have been listening to the U20 Dialogue series. To know more, check out our website u20india.org. Do share the dialogues with your friends and colleagues. Don't forget to follow our social media handles for more information. Stay tuned for our next dialogue.